Ramos from Spain, and from which university? From University of Salamanca, pardon, and Tim Gurus, Timothy Gurus, Tim Gurus. I forgot your university's name. Bon.
Yes, c'est US.
Sorry. Voilà. So, important is your topic. Yeah. We know you. Voilà. So we will start. We will start by Samantha. So you change it a little bit. You change it slightly. Your title. So Feminationalism and Islamophobia on Weibo, analyzing Uyghur gender stereotypes and the public opinion in Chinese social media, and for team on the training modern civilized messengers, secular femininity, and a good motherhood in contemporary colonial Xinjiang. So it will be very interesting. Both of them are very related. So we will start by Samantha. So. Vale, ya se los paso.
Well, hi everyone. I am going to start by saying thanks to the organizing committee for selecting my presentation and my work. And I also have to say that I feel very honored for being here, because I have read most of your works since a lot of years, and my theoretical framework and contextual framework authors are here among us, so it's such an honor. And I will also want to say thank you to Chiara for for helping me to present my work here in this Congress despite my insecurities. So thank you a lot. And well, let's get started. Well, let's start by the theoretical framework of this work. I have to highlight three prominent topics during this theoretical framework. The first one is the concept of feminationalism, developed by Ferris in 2017, which describes the appropriation of feminist discourse by extremist political actors in order to justify xenophobic and exclusionary policies. This phenomenon is well studied in Western liberal democracies, but not in authoritarian context. And this is a point that I want to shed light into this presentation. Feminationalism can be easily summarized by this well-known colonial trope, which is white man saving brown woman from brown man. This framework enables the state to portray itself as the protector and champion of feminist principles, while portraying non-Western or migrant women, especially Muslim ones, as a passive victims without agency that needs to be saved. This saving process is a two-step process. The first step is the denationalization of these migrant or non-Western women, which means that they have to erase their cultural identity, original cultural identity, to be assimilated into the colonial state of state country one, which is the process of renationalization. Why is the focus on migrant women or non-Western women? Why the focus is on women and not men? Because their mother role as the cultural reproducers. Sorry, I'm a Spanish speaker. So, this means that women, we are usually expected to educate our children and telling them how the world functions, what is our culture, which are our values, our mother tongue, etc., etc., etc. Feminist geopolitics is the second topic that I want to highlight, and it enables or helps us to understand the instrumentalization of these feminationalist rhetorics, because they serve a framework where the state claims the moral authority into politically contested areas, which is significant when we are talking about Xinjiang region in China as a politically contested area. Feminist geopolitics connects the intimate with the global, and they put a special focus on bodies as a creator of frontiers inside communities, regions, territories, and the state can appropriate these frontiers in order to create stereotypes of allies, victims, and enemies. Several researchers in authoritarian contexts have highlighted how the state can co-opt these feminist narratives in order to portray itself as progress or a protector of gender equality in front of the national minorities which are portrayed as something backward, old, that need to be modernized. In this sense, this framework also enables the state to justify its repressive policies by reinforcing their legitimacy and authority. As we are talking about Weibo posts on Weibo social media, it's important to highlight the concept of digital authoritarianism. As we all may know, the rise of internet has consolidated the authoritarian state power. In this sense, digital authoritarianism serves as a tool for online propaganda through non-democratic measures such as internet shutdowns, surveillance, censorships, among others. In this sense, social media serves as a critical tool for these authoritarian governments, as social networks are spaces for public engagement, serves as a way to get informed and to discuss politically or participate politically. By monopolizing these digital platforms, authoritarian states can control the flow of the information by highlighting pro-state narratives and diminishing opposing ones. Regarding the contextual framework, we are going to talk about people war on terror in China. Efforts to depict Uyghur women in China can be dated from the 50s, the Cultural Revolution, the 90s, but this efforts gained a new political significance after the 11/11 terrorist attack, because this terrorist attack serves to Chinese government to begin the people war on terror, where all Uyghur resistance or kinds of Uyghur resistance, either political, either academic, were framed as terrorists or terrorism or related to terrorism. In this framework, the paper from Rodriguez Merino and Tang creates or identifies three categories of Uyghur women portrayed by the state, the Chinese government state. The first one is the activist terrorist woman, which is the woman who receives colonization from the Chinese state and is always portrayed as a mental ill woman, or as mentally ill woman, and ironically, as a bad mother also. And the second one is the passive victims, which resonates with feminationalist theory. These women are portrayed as passive victims without agency that needs to be saved. They don't know that they are committing crimes or committing extremist behavior. And that's the reason why Chinese state has to make its intervention to save them. And the third one are the re-educated women. This woman has been saved by the Chinese state, and thanks to its labor, they have achieved economic independence. They are happy, they live a secular life, they wear short skirts, and a lot of stereotypes. By the promotion of this Han-Shi power, the Chinese state, colonial states, redefines the Uyghur culture to these women. This means that it's the Chinese state who explains this woman how is their culture. Which habits or cultural habits are extremism versus what are healthy and traditional, which clothes they will have to wear, which are the traditional craftsmanships, for example. And it also promotes the stereotype of the exotic woman dancer, Uyghur woman dancer, who is gracefully dancer, she's beautiful, and that kind of stereotypes. It's a promotion that how a Uyghur woman has to be. Regarding the methodological framework, we employ the Weibo social media to collect our posts. We collected 2,089 posts from 2020 to 2024 by employing the keywords ethnic Uyghur, Uyghur woman, and Uyghur man. With this post, we create our database, and we analyze it by using our studio program. Before running the topic modeling, we preprocess the test by translating them to the English language and narrating the translation regarding the Chinese language characteristics. Yeah. Sorry. We generate a corpus by tokenizing the text and estimating the words, and we run our topic modeling by employing the LDA algorithm. Then we conduct the sentiment analysis by doing a cross-checking validation through a dual dictionary approach. The first one, Babyder, and second one, the LSD. But these dictionaries can be bad at analyzing idioms or ironies, so I think that it was important to conduct a critical discourse analysis to deepen our understanding of this post. And critical discourse analysis was specifically chosen because it analyzed the power relationships under discourse. Okay, regarding the results, topic modeling show us 6 prominent themes. I don't know if you can read it well from that, but the themes are exotic woman, national unity, liberated martyrs, Uyghur terrorism, national heroes, and religious extremism. I will deepen it later. For the sentiment analysis results, the LSD showed that as predominantly positive topic, which is exoticized women, and two negative ones, which are religious extremism and Uyghur terrorism. But the results are not consistent at all, so that's the reason why we cross-check the dictionaries to confirm our results. And the Bader dictionary is clearer than the LSD. It confirms that exotic women is the most positive topic, while Uyghur terrorism and religious extremism are the most negative ones. There are also two more positive topics, national heroes and national unity, which are very similar. But there is such a sort of polarized topic, which is liberated martyrs. You can neither say it's positive or negative. I'm going to start by the negative themes. These both themes are very similar, which are religious extremism and Uyghur terrorism. These themes linking Islam religion with religious extremism and Uyghur activism with terrorism. The most characteristic about these themes was that both of them highlight the thought labor from the Chinese government to get sorry, 1 second. Have highlighted the Chinese government through labor in order to give peace to the Xinjiang region, and to end up with religious extremism. This can be seen on those examples. I'm going to read them. For example, in the first one, we can read that, thank goodness Xinjiang has controlled the extremism, otherwise women will only have the freedom to wear black robes, for example. On the other hand, in the topic of Uyghur terrorism, we can read, the mainland has eliminated the breeding ground for terrorism through education, vocational training, economic revitalization, improving the status of women, and raising the happiness index. Xinjiang has become a peaceful and happy place. Regarding the positive topics, the topic of national hero highlights Uyghur individuals who serve to the state. They are policemen, they are famous people, they are heroes in that sense. And the topic of national unity highlights and puts a special focus on Uyghur children and how they are integrated into Chinese ways of life, how they fluently speak Mandarin or identify themselves primarily as Chinese people despite their ethnic identity. In spite of ethnic identity. For example, the second one, you can read that, what nationality are you, Tajik or Uyghur? The children said, Chinese nation. In the immature body, the soul was shining. Some of these kind of topics. The exotic woman, as the topic name says, it highlights the beauty of Uyghur women, how they are graceful dancers and wear beautiful clothing, etc., etc. And the most controversial one was liberated martyrs, is a topic that is exclusively dedicated to Uyghur women who have married Han men and live a secular life. For example, they eat pork, for example, and how pursuing this secular life has led them to the ostracism for their community. And we can see some polarized topics because there are a lot of hate comments for Uyghur culture, towards Uyghur culture, while these women are portrayed as brave for living the Uyghur culture. It's this kind of topics. This example is very clear. This beauty is a Uyghur from Xinjiang. Her husband is Han. Her parents are extremely serious extremist ideas. They stopped her from going to school at the age of 11 and made her wear a headscarf. At the age of 20, she bravely left the family that frightened her. Now she lives in Wuwei, Kansu, sorry for my pronunciation when I'm talking English, and has a lovely child. Her living habits are the same as ours. Okay, finally, I'm going to talk the most interesting part, which is the critical discourse analysis, which wants to highlight the structures of dominance behind discourse. In this sense, is the most useful method for us because feminationalism and feminist geopolitical theories highlights the colonial structures, while digital authoritarianism highlights the state control over information. So we are always in our power relationship. In this sense, the results reproduce the social political structures. The voices that results, sorry. The dominant voices were overwhelmingly Han voices. The Han people is that the people that it's always choking. And we can say that because Uyghur people is always referred to in third person or as the other. The geographically data also reinforce this idea because comments from Xinjiang were the 5.5% of the results, and even locally located in Xinjiang region, most of the comments belongs to Han people who has been relocated into Xinjiang region. We also detect presence of bots and influencers who amplifies the voice of the government, and this results on the systematic silencing of Uyghur voices. I didn't find any post of a Uyghur voice. There's always Han people talking about Uyghurs. Well, this is an example of a post that I found. Regarding the most thematic part, we found three principal dichotomies: women versus men, loyalty versus terrorism, and backward versus modern. Regarding the woman-man dichotomy, the predominance of posts talking about Uyghur women is evident. Despite the keywords employed, most of the posts were talking about Uyghur women all the time. In general, in all of these posts, women are portrayed as a passive subjects who has not controlled their narrative. For example, there are videos of Uyghur women talking, but the posts are allowed by Han people, and it's the Han people who is commenting about these women. So these women do not talk in any post. Following the Rodriguez Merino and Chang stereotypes, the analysis showed that there's no activist and terrorist woman stereotype during all these posts. This evidence that digital authoritarianism functions well as they eliminated all these contested narratives. The second, Uyghur passive women adhering to religious practice are often depicted as generalized figures, as curved figures, faceless or faceless figure under a hijab. It's very common to see posts with ancient photographs of Uyghur women under a hijab, and these photos and posts try to. Sorry. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to read, sorry, because I had no time. I was very nervous, sorry. You don't know how clever I am in Spanish, sorry. Okay, I'm going to read.
Terrorizing you.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Okay, we were talking about second, Uyghur passive women adhering to religious practice are often depicted as generalized faceless figures under a hijab in other photographs, thus evoking imaginary of a regressive past and the religious extremism. Comments on such posts, as we can see, express relief over modernization changes in Xinjiang and the fear of these veiled figures. For example, this woman looks like a ghost. I was so scared. I must thought it was a ghost. The new era sister would. While these comments on the liberation of Uyghur women may appear positive in a Western way of thinking, they obscure continued subjugation. According to feminationalists, this narrative depicts women as passive subjects with the state as the primary agent of their liberation and arbiter of their identity. This reinforces the notion that the state, not the woman, determines their dress and their behavior. Consequently, the discourse on Uyghur women's liberation lacks female leadership, and the narrative is automatically marginalized and subjugates women. Okay. In contrast to the passive victim stereotypes, we found the reeducated woman and especially the Uyghur dancer stereotype of women that constructs an objectified and musified image that appeals especially to ham men. Similarly, the portrayal of this woman as subjugated or passive objects perceives. Moreover, this narrative reflects a colonial perspective whereby Uyghur culture is reduced to a mere source of entertainment. The capitalization of this Uyghur culture is reflected in the practice of ham women, for example, some posts appropriating the Uyghur attire and the perpetration of Uyghur performances in a Xinjiang kind of endless dance floor. And for example, we have some text here that reflects this way of thinking. Some representations of reeducated women are individualized ones. These women have names, for example, and stories. One of them is the ones who serves to the state. They are examples of patriotism, and they are even celebrated on its M. And I took this example because I think it's very good to exemplify the colonial perspective, because it identifies this woman with feminist hand figures instead of Uyghur feminist or figures such as Rizangul, as we saw the other day. And this also perpetuates the idea that liberation comes linked with hand progress. It's linked to hand progress always time. Secondly, in reeducated women, we have the liberated martyrs, who are the Uyghur women that marry to hands men, but they are also the victim of the ostracism of their community. This also reflects a subjugation of this woman, reflecting the colonial trope of saving Muslim women, where the Chinese state takes the figure of the Han husband who has led this woman to the progress, to the modernization, to a better way of life, and this colonial ideology that is always reflecting. And this is a test, for example. And regarding Uyghur men, we have a dichotomized figure. Regarding the loyalty and terrorism dichotomy, Uyghur women can be heroes or terrorists. Uyghur heroes are individual beings, which reflect that this is kind of an exception to the rule, because most of the posts reflect Uyghur men as terrorists, which is the minority of the narrative. They are generalized, and we can say this because most posts about terrorism show photographs and videos of Uyghur men. Okay. And finally, regarding the backward and modern dichotomy, we have the contrasting between children and the elderly, especially in the use and control of Mandarin languages. This post is very special to show this because it shows that for the Chinese government and the narrative, the people while on terror results are paying off. Because while children are portrayed as the future, a future who speak Chinese Mandarin and identifies itself as Chinese, the elderly Uyghur people who doesn't know how to speak well Chinese or identify themselves as Uyghur are going to disappear and die. And this is the idea of the woman as social reproducer who has been assimilated and educate their children into the Han living style, and which leads us to the idea that Tobin says in this paper that is the social death in Xinjiang. Regarding the conclusions, we can say that China employs a rhetoric similar to that of feminationalism. This amplifies the theory to non-democratic contexts and non-Western contexts, and it also highlights that feminationalism in authoritarian context works differently because it's not focused on migrant people but on their national minorities as a way to justify some repressive policies, and which is also curious, it also works as a means of propaganda to the Western world, because most of these posts or these videos has English subtitles on the videos, which means that it's very weird because it's a tiny social network, but this means that the public receptor is not in China, but here on the Western world. I had to say that. It has some implications because feminist movements must take into account that this feminist rhetoric can be employed for these authoritarian countries and also for these human rights defense movements. Because by employing these narratives, the state can legitimize itself in the Western world, which increase the marginalization of subaltern voices and their loss of the credibility. Okay, as you can see, this work has a lot of limitations. And the work was collected manually, all the posts, so I need a way to automatic extraction method. The work has a lot of internal validity, but a lack of external validity, as I only focus on Uyghur people and on specific social media. And also the one limitation is what Uyghur think about themselves also, because there's no Uyghur voices around this. I don't know if there are another social media that I can access to know what Uyghur people think about itself, especially in the context of China, not the context of the diaspora, the context inside China. It's something that I'm going to, could be interesting to compare. Okay, sorry for my English, sorry for that. I was very nervous. Sorry, and that's.
Yeah, thank you very much, and bravo. As a French Uyghur, I understand speaking in English. Yeah, so.
Colonialism.
Yeah, and the colonial languages, and one day I hope we can do it in Uyghur. Yeah, thank you very much. I suggest we pass directly to Tim's presentation, because the two presentations are so close, so related, and it will be really interesting to discuss after both of them. And also, yeah, it's okay for your time, because Tim gave you 10 minutes, his 10 minutes.
I'm trying to play the full screen.
Take this one?
We'll just
Okay,
With glasses inside.
Hello, everyone, and yeah, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for all the great organization and the excellent papers that have preceded mine. And hopefully, I don't disappoint with maybe some of these half-baked thoughts, because I've been looking at examples of Chinese colonialism in the Uyghur homeland, and for many aspects of colonialism, they fit, quite neatly other patterns that we've seen, whether it's the siphoning of indigenous time or the ways that domestic space is ordered. The Chinese strategy in the Uyghur homeland, seems to be carbon copies, but the time it took between writing the abstract and then preparing the paper, I found that strategies towards women don't seem to be following at least any of the colonial examples that I have compared in the past. Though the focus of what the CCP calls stability work and anti-extremism arguably is placed on the shoulders of Uyghur women. And I'm inspired by Stoller and her discussions on parenting and the creation of colonial categories to demonstrate that proper motherhood, and using square quotes here, among Uyghurs becomes a marker of specifically Chinese morality and citizenship. Yet in a slight contradiction, and what I mean here is that on one hand, the party state is endorsing and promoting motherhood, that at the same time, the party encourages Uyghurs, Uyghur women specifically, to delay or forego motherhood to instead participate in industrial labor in the Chinese interior. So there's almost these kind of competing expectations for Uyghurs, Uyghur women. They're supposed to be mothers, yet they're also supposed to delay motherhood and then engage in a type of industrial employment, especially in Nadi. My PowerPoint had some problems, so I always like to throw in some fancy animations, but I had to save it as a PDF, so my fancy animations sadly won't be here today, so you just have me. So many of my Weixin posts were hosted on official zero distance or Lingjuli accounts. So these were first activated in 2015. Zero distance accounts are external propaganda, or Waixuan, channels operating at county, prefectural, and district levels in Xinjiang. The novelty and importance of these accounts, according to the State Council of Information and the PRC, are the site's abilities to, quote, create new modes of network communications by releasing local information while embedding news from other locales. Every village-state work, and here I'm talking broadly about the Fangguiju campaigns. So each team assigns a member to, quote, provide timely publicity materials on the village's work progress and the effects of policy implementation, often in the form of social media posts. Both these Lingjuli and also Meipian have personal blogs of these cadres. I read these digital media as ethnographic text. In other words, a form of dialogue that has implicit and explicit audiences, but one that's not shared by the researcher. The Women's Federation of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, the administrative region's branch of the All China Women's Federation, acts as a direct link between the party, the government, and women in Xinjiang. In Uyghur communities, especially, the Women's Federation of Xinjiang has taken an active role in eliminating quote-unquote extremism. According to the chairwoman of Kashgar's Women's Federation, Dilbar Imam, Uyghur women must eliminate the environment in which religious extremist forces disseminate their teachings and propagate the real Xinjiang. And as Uyghur mothers, we must remember that when the mother is good, the child will be good. When the child is good, the Minzu will be good. And when the Minzu is good, the fatherland will be good. So, according to these remarks, a stable Xinjiang begins with quote-unquote liberated women. In the context of this current crisis in the Uyghur homeland, what do women, or what do women free of extremism look like, and how do they act? The answer, as I mentioned in the introduction, is contradictory. Although motherhood among Uyghurs becomes a marker of this Chinese morality, and we even see some Confucian-inspired virtues here, women are also encouraged to delay motherhood for industrial work. Yet, what we'll see, and maybe my kind of half-baked conclusions that I forewarned you about, they tend to converge at one point, and that's assimilation. But we have two very different avenues and channels towards assimilation. So a little bit of theory, and I've cut a lot of it out, but a little bit of theory that's informing my analysis here are those debates about women and how women and their bodies have often become national barometers of progress. And in this light, the female body and the behavior of women are often thrust into and entangled in national debates over gender, politics, and quote-unquote modernity. In Muslim-majority countries, colonizers targeted the veil specifically in campaigns to, and again I use these all in scare quotes, to liberate and civilize women. In British-controlled Egypt, women's low status in Mohammedan countries, as these texts said. In his memoir, one official wrote that veiling produced a deteriorating effect on the male population, which prevented the rest of society from elevating its characters to that of Europeans. In Uzbekistan, the hujum, or assault to elevate women's social standing, became public spectacles of mass unveiling. And more recently, and closer to home, at least for me, Laura Bush in 2001 alluded to apparent harms of veiling when she praised the US-led global war on terror for its liberating effects on Afghan women who were, quote, no longer imprisoned in their own homes. Well, I guess we do have a little bit of an animation there. These examples bring into sharp relief a central tenet of colonial projects. Indigenous women, especially Muslim women, need to be saved, but not necessarily made equal, and I think that's an important intervention. Strategies to subjugate bodies, instead of eliminating them, are illuminated by what Foucault called biopower. This theory describes the subtleties of power and its calculated management of life. Foucault argued that political order cannot simply be imposed on a population. It has to be taught, replicated, and self-inflicted to effectively regulate human behavior. Power, therefore, functions to control life, not necessarily end it, through, quote, continuous regulatory and corrective mechanisms. Accordingly, the impulse to look and act in certain ways is not merely forced upon the individual through threats of violence, although that is and has been a strategy amongst the Chinese Communist Party, but at the same time, the power works to construct normality and deviance, and it actually creates a desire to conform. Despite their historical and current roles as professionals, religious specialists, entrepreneurs, as well as mothers and daughters, the list continues, the Chinese Communist Party has flattened the dynamism of womanhood in Uyghur communities and reduced them to subservient housewives and, as the now infamous post reads, baby-making machines. But this flattening is absolutely essential for colonial projects. Colonizers need victims of their own society to justify their liberation. And here we are going to go through a couple of steps and discuss how these steps are interrelated. And one of the first steps has been, if we look even before the current crisis in mass incarceration, has been redefining beauty and changing appearances. Indeed, one of the first steps towards liberation is transforming appearances. The party state began disciplining the female Uyghur body in earnest nearly a decade ago. Under loosened restrictions on religion during the 1980s and 1990s and early 2000s, Uyghurs re-embraced and revitalized Islamic spiritual practice in their life worlds, similar to how Tibetans and Hui and Mongols did the same thing. Restored, repaired, and newly built mosques attracted worshippers in droves. Pious dress, especially quote-unquote imported trends in veiling, especially from Turkey and Indonesia, also became more visible. And this is where Jim Leibold and I co-wrote a piece where we saw and observed increasing numbers of Uyghur women wearing hijab and chumbel and jilbab in cities like Urumqi and in Kashgar. Seizing on global anxieties over radical Islam and its signs, Chinese officials have insisted that extremism is an embodied practice that reveals itself clearly in one's appearance. To curb pious dress, the CCP introduced Project Beauty, or Liangli Gongcheng, a 5-year US $8 million campaign to encourage Muslim women to, quote, look towards modern culture by removing face veils and jilbab. By 2015, authorities introduced legislation banning appearances deemed incorrigible and deviant. According to the city of Urumqi's prohibition on wearing items that mask the face or robe the body, it would be illegal to don hijab, lichak, chumbel, and jilbab, as well as abnormally long beards and clothing featuring star and moon insignia in any public area. Now, some of the justifications were quite intriguing. In a 2015 interview with Phoenix Online, Xiong Xuanguo, former secretary of the region's Standing Committee of Politics and Law, justified the ban on 3 grounds. His first justification was doctrinal. Although not an Islamic jurist by any means, Xiong maintained that veils are not mandated in the Quran, which in fact he does have a point. But we won't get into the interpretation of fiqh now. He then provided a cultural rationalization. These appearances are not what he called traditional Uyghur sartorial culture. In fact, they deviate from it. How, Xiong asked, can Uyghurs who possess a rich tradition of singing and dancing dance dressed in such a way? Xiong then presented a medical explanation. He claimed veils are detrimental to the health of women and put them at risk of respiratory tract infection and skin diseases. For officials, the connection was clear. Veiling only occurs under the cloak of extremism. After Chen Chongbo was promoted to General Secretary of Xinjiang on October 29, 2016, officials launched campaigns against wearing strange clothing and challenged Uyghurs to find courage for a secular lifestyle. Officials are realizing this goal by farting the complexions of Uyghur feminized bodies with glamour. Representatives of the All China Women's Federation have organized step-by-step makeover tutorials in several southern counties. During one such event in Kalakash County, Hotan, a Uyghur beautician taught her peers how to style her hair and apply cosmetics. Usma, henna, braided hair, and otherwise secular grooming habits typical to Turkic Muslims of the Tarim Basins and Fergana Valley were notably absent from the makeovers. In fact, you'll see that some of the aesthetics were inspired by Han preferences for beauty. These markers of beauty, once paradoxically promoted by the CCP as traditional yet modern, meaning atlas, stolpa, etc., are now largely regulated to token expressions of Uyghur culture, unpacked from closets and dusted off for tourists and state media. To provide rural Uyghurs, especially women, with access to state-mediated fashion and a gateway to specifically Chinese standards of beauty, county-level governments launched the Pretty Hair Salon Initiative. This campaign has funded the constructions of salons across rural villages. In 2018 alone, the government boasted over 2,800 beauty parlors, each equipped with facial steamers, shampoo chairs, styling chairs, and disinfectants. By setting new standards of beauty, the CCP does not force women to look a certain way only through this threat of violence. Of course, that threat of violence is still there, but compliance is conditioned over time. Viewed in this light, as colonizers, the CCP installs the necessary structures and creates the impulses to conform. Officials confidently predict that this campaign will transform Uyghur women into docile Chinese subjects. Requiring new appearances has been pointed out by Altman in the context of indigenous boarding schools in Canada as, quote, forcing a new way of life beyond techniques, introducing a new worldview that is vastly contradictory to indigenous ways of knowing, being, and doing, end quote. Evidently, checking the theoretical boxes, a representative from the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region's Women's Federation explained that, quote, pretty hair salon initiatives will bring forth 3 transformations in the lives of women. First, women will transform their body image, then they will transform their way of life. Finally, they will transform their way of thinking. So again, these changes begin with appearance. But they have to go further. So after we've changed the appearance, we have to redefine their expectations as women, as mothers, as daughters, and redefine their roles. Manuals issued by the Fanghuiju, in other words, these government sent-down worker campaigns that assign cadres to Uyghur villages, refer to the Model Mother Project. It recognizes the importance of motherly roles in establishing stable homes and harmonious communities. It reads, mothers aren't only a family's binding tie, they're also able to influence the thoughts and ideas of 3 generations. A civilized modern mother can influence and change a family. Central to spurring these changes is the cultivation of virtues that appear to be inspired by Confucianism. The manual continues, establish that mothers are the epitome of education, and actually there's this really interesting kind of feminist interpretation of the 5 relationships in Confucianism. And when you think about how women only appear once in the 5 relationships in the husband-wife role, some will say that the most important work rests on the shoulders of women because in the Confucian way of thoughts, if harmony was established in the home, it would have a kind of a ripple effect, a domino effect, and that harmony would spread throughout the rest of society. And so although, again, women only appear once in the 5 relationships, that to some it's interpreted as that they have really the largest responsibility. So then to continue, daughters-in-law are the epitome of filial piety, and then we see this kind of inversion of Confucianism again because classically it was the father-son relationship, and specifically the son that embodied filial piety. And the neighborhood is the epitome of unity. In its ongoing efforts to rescue women from extremism and propel them towards modern society, the Women's Federation of Xinjiang holds periodical homeschools. And one of my editors once insisted it should be like household schools, but I wanted to play with the kind of the American idea of homeschool and some of those things. So now that the editor's not here, I'm going back to homeschool, which are intensive workshops as crash courses in civilized living. According to the Federation's official website, homeschools advocate a new era among women to change customs and improve the modern civilized qualities of rural women. More specifically, the Women's Federation tasked itself with training, quote, a group of modern civilized messengers who, by demonstration, will lead other rural women to abandon bad habits, or 鲁西, and educate women to love the party, love their country, and love their families. Household schools, I didn't change it in here. So homeschools generally entail technical training during the day and policy lectures in the evening. Cooking classes are a focal point of household schools, of these household school workshops. It reminds me of some of the conversations we had this morning about whether or not cooking food could be a form of resistance. However, there has been some state intervention and where many officials believe that diets in Xinjiang are monotonous, and this is according to one Han official, and part of the hands-on instruction is on meal preparations and guidance to cultivate, quote-unquote, scientific and healthy dietary habits. So indeed, these cooking classes are a focal point since diets in southern Xinjiang are monotonous and unhealthy. Part of this hands-on instructions is to prepare meals and guidance to cultivate scientific and healthy dietary habits, specifically in the form of Chinese-style culinary skills training courses. At a homeschool event in Kona members of the Women's Federation told local women about the dangers of unhealthy diets and taught them how to prepare onion pancakes, fried dough sticks, dumplings, steamed rolls, cold dishes, and a variety of soups. In Balabeshi County, the more than 260 women who attended the local training course learned how to prepare 13 breakfast foods, 4 entrees, and 8 other side dishes. In addition, participants practice washing, cutting, stir-frying, pan-frying, deep-frying, and braising, among other cooking techniques. One woman praised the event, quote, "Before, I only knew how to cook lagman, polo, meat soups, and chuchile. Now, my house is like a restaurant with 5 or 6 types of hot dishes and 3 or 4 types of cold dishes and several staple foods." Other Uyghur women, however, are expected to work outside the home and are encouraged, coerced, and forced into factory work. For women who cannot leave their home village because of familial responsibilities, usually a child or elderly care, and there's no other quote-unquote surplus labor in their household, the government has constructed and coordinated satellite factories across the region. In a document brought to light by Adrian Zenz, satellite factory work is meant to have a liberating effect on women's life. According to the document, the construction of satellite factories enables many women to accept a modern enterprise culture, to obey the company management, causing them to change from passivity to active acceptance. Wearing work clothes has become a normal behavior for industrial workers. This, at the same time, loosening the grip of extremism, letting women walk out of the courtyard and integrate into modern economic and social life. Other women found themselves in factories scattered across Neidi, or Inner China. And perhaps one of the most publicized examples on Chinese media, over 200 young women from Pishan County were arranged to work at the Huaibei Huahu Fashion Company Limited in Anhui Province. Profiles of these women highlight their happy days spent earning a living, spending leisure time learning Chinese, and mingling with Han colleagues. They have become so comfortable in their new work that, according to official media, they consider Anhui their second home. And for some Uyghur women, long-term employment in AD provided time to develop at least what's described officially as romantic relationships with local men, usually Han people. A woman from Kila County met a Han man from Anhui while working in AD. At their wedding, the bride and groom were each sent 500 yuan in cash. Yet another Uyghur woman from Khotan, this time in Baoqi Township, actively signed up for migrant work. That was the quote from the official site, and was sent to Lanse Technology Company in Changsha, Hunan, where she met her future husband. She reflected on the government policy and said, "Working outside not only helped me get rid of poverty and become rich, but also I gained love." These stories of inter-ethnic marriage, and what I can only hope is true romance, may point to another assimilative intention of these working campaigns. According to most interpretations of fiqh, or Islamic jurisprudence, Muslim women are forbidden to marry non-Muslim men. It is often assumed in inter-ethnic marriage in China, in which the groom is Han, that any child will assume the surname of the child, and he will be raised, or she will be raised essentially as a Han person. In one specific example, a young woman with a Uyghur father and a Kazakh mother married a Han man. As parents, they will raise their children as generally Zhonghua Minzu before telling them about any other ethnic group. So in conclusion, this is where I had a fancy animation. What appeared to me at first were different or contradictory approaches to civilizing Uyghur women. They ultimately reached the same end, and that's assimilation. For Uyghur women who remain in their communities, the state has imposed itself into intimate spaces. Fanghuiju workers in the campaigns introduce aesthetic preferences and virtues favored and promoted by the party state. Yet, especially for young women, the state encourages and coerces them to pursue work outside the home, specifically in Nadi, where they're immersed in Han society and have a better opportunity to meet a Han spouse. So we'll end right there.
Thank you so much for both of you, for your brilliant presentation. These topics so much. Oui, pardon, merci. So much interesting, and also I have the same question for both of you because for me this topic is one topic. And before my question, my question, I would like to also, how to say, féliciter. I would like to, voilà, féliciter, congratulate, merci, voilà, congratulate, especially Samantha. And we were talking just before Leo that, we need more young scholars in Spanish language. So maybe here we don't have much Spanish students come to hear us because of the language barrier. So we need more Spanish-speaking scholars join us. So that's why we encourage you, Samantha, to continue your work with us. And also the feminationalism is very interesting topic, and just like Orientalism is it's very studied or totally absent feminationalism in China studies. So it's so much interesting and important. And feminationalism, or as a team's topic on the colonial and the patriarchal violence against colonized women that John McLeon called double colonization, is both of them are related and should be analyzed, I think, by the colonial discourse studies and I know that team you studied also Laura Stoller's work, who works also sides Orientalism work and violence, and it's a double violence, patriarchal and colonial violence against colonized women. And also there are other works that, of course, the fundamental and foundational work of Edward Said on Orientalism did not specifically studied on women's perspective, but the feminist scholars after, especially recent years, they studied a lot Orientalism from women's feminist perspective, especially Asia Japar's work is very interesting, and I think it's very much fit to Uyghur women's situation. Asia Japar is Algerian, and my question for you both, the same question. Samantha, you worked on feminationalism, and but I did not see, the analyze from the Orientalist, the analysis on Orientalist studies, and also the colonial discourse analyze. I think it was more interesting. Also, it is interesting. Of course, I mean more useful and interesting to use it. and also the role of in Chinese Orientalism à la chinoise, or Chinese Orientalism with Chinese characteristics. I think it is important to analyze from this perspective, and also the role of femocrats. And maybe your study is not focused. There is no femocrats role in your study. Maybe you have your urban thinking about it, but I think it's important to mention the role of femocrats. And interestingly, Tim, you worked a lot, mentioned a lot the role of femocrats, Chinese femocrats against in their patriarchal and the colonial violence against Uyghur women, the role of the associations, women associations, and also there. But I did not see the colonial discourse analyzed from more on relating to it on Orientalist. The study with the new perspective, with the perspectives, feminist perspectives on the Chinese Orientalism or Orientalism with Chinese characteristics. I would like to know more about it. If maybe I know, Tim, you worked. Of course, you mentioned the work of Stoller. Maybe I would like to know more about it. Thank you very much. Voilà, merci.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ilnur, for your comments. Thanks, Ilnur, for your comments. I know that some scholars have linked this feminationalist rhetoric with Orientalism, with Chinese characteristics, but I did not find the specific paper to put it on a theoretical framework. So I need to explore more about that, because I found East Asian studies, and I know Orientalism by Said, I know it, the theory, but a part of me, maybe I'm mistaken, is something that is, I found it that it's Orientalism, but a part of me is quite controversial, because it's this crystal said also, it's like a colonized country that has been colonized, who is colonizing again, and this idea of the Orientalism inside of Orientalism. I don't know how to say that. Yeah, it's maybe mistaken for that. Yeah, I need to work more on that. And the role of femocrats, I found, but I need to put focus on that, but I found some kind of Uyghur influencer of femocrats in some videos that were posted by Han people, the videos of this woman, and I think that it's quite interesting to study this, especially in other social media such as Chinese TikTok. There are a lot of videos about that, and it can be the next step to study that.
So I guess I kind of have two answers to the really thought-provoking question. One's the honest answer, and that's, I was just thinking differently and using different theory, and I put Edward Said on the back burner for this particular case. So I just didn't think that's the honest answer. But I guess if I wanted to pretend that wasn't the honest answer, I could say that, but Said's case is pretty obvious, and it's almost been overplaying too much. Yeah, we know that there are these representations, and these representations, not only do they create inequality, but they perpetuate this inequality. But that's already been established, and we're well beyond that conversation right now. So we want to maybe look at the inner dynamics and the dynamics at grassroots levels that don't necessarily reify this holistic or this monolith state, but it's actually looking at actors who carry out these acts of, whether you want to call it colonialism and Orientalism, and that's where I think maybe the more interesting questions and answers lie. But that's not the honest answer. The honest answer is I just didn't think about using Said.
And Tim, and you also mentioned, the motherhood concept for as a Chinese morality, and at the same time, they are doing exact opposite against Uyghur women, to sending them very in young age to Chinese cities to work, to labor. And it's interesting because in French colonial history, in recent French colonial history, we have the same phenomena with La Réunion. During 60s, 70s, in Métropole in France, French government, they were against avortement, against abortion, pardon, yeah, against abortion at the and at the same time, they had, I totally forget the. They used this exactly opposite policy in French metropole. And in La Réunion, and also they also take then the children of La Réunion to send also the French metropolis, and it's interesting to compare to it in this specific point.
Do you have any readings that you could recommend?
Yeah, we have in France. We have especially French sociologist, feminist sociologist, Françoise Vergès. Her work were also translated in other languages, in Spanish and English.
Thank you.
In specific this topic, and she is a decolonial specialist. And the book's name also Le ventre des femmes. Le ventre. Women's womb. Okay. Voilà.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you have the questions, you can now start.
Thank you to both presenters. Very interesting and complementary presentations, I think. My question is for Tim, and on this implied Confucian values and this harmony in the home, order in the nation. I mean, it's certainly implied, that's for sure, and of course it's part of a broader sinicization campaign that we're all very familiar with. But how implied is it, and or have you seen in these postings anything explicitly showing Uyghurs being, forced to read Confucian texts, to discuss the merits of these great Chinese thinkers and to model their lives on that? Has it reached the point of explicit?
Yes, it has. Not as much in the context of adult women. Certainly, that's part of curriculum in schools now. Not just reciting Confucian classics, but also donning the dress of a Confucian scholar. Though some of the night classes, I didn't have time to get into them here, but in some villages there has to be one adult member present at night classes, and sometimes they're held a couple times a week. Sometimes it's once a month. They're supposed to be, training in Chinese, but it's often the adult women who attend these classes, but they're often taught Confucian poems too. And another kind of odd nod to Confucianism, and you see this ritual being, it's invented, right? There's nothing really, I mean, it's supposed to be Confucian, but there is no, as far as I know, no like documents of this, are foot washing ceremonies to show your humbleness, especially to mothers. So mothers, taking off their, it was almost biblical too, right? But the idea of filial piety, and that's the use. I mean, they use xiao shun, right? It doesn't get more Confucian than that. So that's more explicit, but this is kind of this neo Confucianism in Xi Jinping's era. So yeah, has become very explicit.
Thank you both for your very interesting presentations. My question is for Samantha. It's a little bit technical. It's about your methodology. I was wondering if when you were analyzing the posts, if you took into context threads. So for example, if one post was the beginning and then there were 14 other ones, were there disagreements in there? Did people talk about the same subject in different ways? And the reason why I ask is because if you had, 1,000 posts on one particular topic, it doesn't necessarily mean they all agreed with that point of view.
Okay, when we were collecting the posts, when I was collecting, I took employer for neutralize this. Well, when I was collecting the posts, there were threads, and I made the original post has a number. Each post has a number, and the comments associated with that post receive the code of the post original. So I can capture the positive visions, the negative visions, if they were on the same way of thinking, or there were discrepancies among the comments around the users. Yeah, I found it.
Thank you.
Thanks to the two of you for these presentations. I found them very inspiring. I had one remark and one question for Samantha. The remark is congratulations, very good first presentation. That was. This is very promising. Thank you for that. You asked you asked the audience what could be another platform that I could research. I think Douyin would be a very good place to start with, because you have both textual and visual and audio content on it, and that I think that's a great way to start exploring more context and Uyghur content that is produced by Uyghurs.
For Douyin, I have to register with some personal information, like my phone number or something like that.
As I understand it, but I speak maybe under the control of people who know it more. There are two layers.
Yeah.
One of them is you can explore it without having to identificate.
Okay.
But you don't have access to all the content of the platform. For example, I've been exploring Douyin without identification, but I know I cannot access everything. Yeah. But you can access already a lot. And then there is this second layer that through identification you will be able to access more. Access maybe older posts. So maybe you can start without identifying, and then slowly, as you get more and more familiar with the platform, maybe you can decide what you do next.
Okay, thank you.
There's only limited access to comments of the videos if you don't have an account. So I think you have full access to the. I think you have full access to the videos. It's just the comments that they limit that you can.
Right.
Yeah. And another way also, it's like for WeChat, because I had to last year I decided to open the download the WeChat to contact my family, for example, but I can't do, as you know, for the security of my phone, etc. So I bought a new phone, and someone bought me a new SIM card. You know, the temporary card, like card.
Yeah, I know that.
And with that, you can open an account.
Yeah, it's a tactic because I'm very concerned about my personal information for
Yeah, of course.
security.
That's right.
So actually, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no.
Actually, about this kind of digital ethnography, and you specifically mentioned there that re-educated women there, and I think Bruna Stenberg and Tanha Sahar, they have a paper about personalized propaganda about these Uyghur women, young women, using their personal accounts in different Chinese platforms, so you can find different other platforms you could look at from that paper, and you could see how these women are presenting their narratives through their own personal social media accounts, as you showed in your slides that one Uyghur woman was talking about, why don't we eat pork? Of course we are eating pork, right? What's the problem with that, and all this kind of thing. So they have very detailed analyses about those videos and so on, so it could be very helpful for you to look at that. And maybe for both papers, I don't know, I think Tim knows much better than me about this topic, but I think for both papers, Bulag's work on collaborative nationalism and how the Chinese government sees minoritized communities as, or how they feminize minority communities, or how they make them as little brothers instead of big brothers, big brother and little brother relationship, and so on, would be interesting to look at. And also for specifically about Tim's paper, that I assigned one paper for my Central Asia course, which was very fascinating for me, that how Russian colonization, how Russia presents this kind of woman-man relationship, how they present Russian women are much better mothers than Central Asian women, and how they can civilize Central Asia by marrying Central Asian men in that sense. And that could be a very good kind of case to look at probably.
Thank you. And what was the author of Collaborative Nationalism? Gulag.
Bulag, Uradin Bulag.
Thank you.
And for the paper you mentioned on personalized propaganda, that was in China File, right?
No, China File one is very short.
Okay.
They have a chapter very detailed about this in edited volume called Voice and Voiceless.
I just had another resource to recommend for Samantha, which is I always find that one of the most unfiltered places on the Chinese internet is Baidu Tieba, which is like essentially, the best way I can describe it is Chinese Reddit that's connected to Baidu. I mean, it's really fascinating, and like Reddit, you can find all these little sub-pages, these little buzz, they call it, and you can find one for, the Xinjiangba, and you can find one for all the small cities too, to talk about these things. It's more filtered than it used to be, but it's still not as filtered as a place like Weibo is, just because it's not known, and a lot of foreigners don't really go on this platform at all. It is like Douyin because, like you guys are talking about, you can access it through the web client, but you can't see everything necessarily. But that changes. The rules seem to change. But I remember as recently as like 2022, there was like a lot of stuff like ads for prison guards, stuff about Xinjiang cotton, a lot of Chinese men from inland China like posting and saying like, hey, how do I marry a Uyghur woman? What do I have to do? I mean, it was just incredibly unfiltered, so you might find some interesting stuff there.
Thank you.
Okay, if there is no more question, we can conclude this panel, and we have a post-cafe? No? Okay, post-cafe. Thank you.
tonight can celebrate tonight.
Well.
Sorry, Tim, I forgot my question.